Hello everyone, now for my next solution. So I try to look at the world's problems and figure out the most logical solution that we can come up with. And another big problem that I see in the world is our currency. And it needs addressed because it's a problem that's steadily getting worse and worse. So it's a in-depth, hard problem to address is our currency and our money and how it all works. So let's break it down from the start and just realize that money is just our way to trade goods and services and products. And without money, it makes it very difficult for society to function. So money is the basis in which we operate. But at the end of it all, the only thing that really gives money its power is our belief in it. If we chose to use a different currency or a different way of trading goods, that's our free will in a free country, and we can do what we want. Now, if we decided to start trading in gold or silver or ammo, or you can literally trade in anything you want, that's our free will, and we should be allowed to do that. So the major problem happens is when people are allowed to manipulate this currency for their own personal greed. That is a major, major problem, because then you have a group of people that are above everybody else and manipulating the system and causing problems. There's this thing called the Libor scandal, in which the people running the banking system got caught frauding the stock market for $500 trillion. $500 trillion. Think about how much money that is. Our national debt is $34 trillion right now. So $500 trillion is just an insane amount to think of. And how they could have fixed the entire system, and how much they manipulate the system. So go look it up. You can look up Libor scandal. It's $500 trillion. So the thing that gives them this ability to manipulate the system in such a way is the Federal Reserve. And there's a bunch of banks that own the Federal Reserve, and they knew the interest rates before they would release them, obviously, because that's how interest rates and everything works, is that these banks that run the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve is run up by a bunch of super banks, and they release the interest rate to the public, and once the interest rate is released, then that's how the stock market functions, and that's basically a big part of what runs the stock market. And so if the big banks know what's getting ready to happen, because they're the ones that are setting the interest rates, they can bet against what's getting ready to happen. And lo and behold, there you have the Libor scandal, to where they just frauded us and stole and manipulated the system. So what has enabled them to be able to do this? So if you look at the way the Federal Reserve is run, they can just print money out of nowhere. And when they print money out of nowhere, they can do basically whatever they want with it. And if they want to give it to their billionaire friends, like quantitative easing, look it up. It's where it's called a trickle-down effect, where they print off billions of dollars and give it to the bankers and say, hey, loan it out to the people. We trust you, and it's going to work out really good, and it's going to make the economy flourish. But lo and behold, it's a circle where they just make a bunch of money off of it. And when you don't have something that is a tangible object to back a system, it can be manipulated. So when the Federal Reserve was created in the early 1900s, it was created to go with the income tax system and basically manipulate the entire monetary system. And there's just a elite group of people that make money off of all this and basically fraud us all. and it takes away our power, we the people's power. So you have to have a tangible object to back a currency. That is the most important thing. Anything other than that, and it's going to leave it open for manipulation. And you really should be able to, at least in some manner, be able to back up this currency at any time, to where if it's like a gold back standard, even if you're using different dollars, where you can go and cash in every dollar printed for every piece of gold, and there is an equal amount. So logically speaking, you want something that you can tangibly touch to be the backing of the dollar or any currency, because if you can't, it could be created out of thin air and manipulated. So at any time, you should be able to cash in and say, hey, I have this dollar, I want equal amounts of this tangible product to exchange for this dollar, and that's how the currency works. And there used to be a gold currency, and our society functioned just fine, and that's pretty much how it's worked since the dawn of time. You just got a piece of gold or silver, and it's just like a coin, and you exchange things that way, and the value of it is the actual coin itself. But if you think of what we have now, like a piece of paper, a $100 bill, how much is a $100 bill worth? I mean, what does it cost to make a little piece of paper? It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost hardly anything at all for them to do that. And so now that is something else that's controlled by someone else. And so at the end of it all, you have to have a tangible object in order for it to logically work. And in the early 1900s, the Federal Reserve was created, and they decided to create the income tax system about the same time so they could feed off of each other. And they just manipulate the system and create money out of thin air and take from us. And it's just a whole system in which it's just massively being manipulated and profited from. And the most logical way in order to get the power back to the people is to make some kind of tangible object and some kind of tangible way to trade these goods and services. And so I've got a couple different ideas, but I want to make sure to go ahead and state that electronic currency is just the worst thing we could do. I know there's a lot of people that love Bitcoin, and I get it. Logically, it makes sense. We're trying to do something to get away from the Federal Reserve and their power, which is a great idea in theory, but the means in which we're going about it doesn't play out very well, because they can monopolize it at any time, and I kind of feel that they might have already. If you look, BlackRock is one of the major holders in Bitcoin right now, and with anything non-renewable, any entity could come in and buy it all. And that's even what's the scary part about gold or silver, is that eventually BlackRock or some major entity could come in, and Vanguard, and buy out all of it and make it to where there's none left, and they've now monopolized it. But if you have a renewable resource that currency is based on, that changes everything and makes it to where they can never control it, and it's always a tangible based object. I'll get to that in a minute. Back to the electronic currency. If they already have it monopolized and figured out to where they're already setting things that way, that's an automatic red flag that we need to be worrying about. Second is, logically, it gives them full control over our lives, and I know for a fact that the government is pushing for that. And a dollar collapse is imminent. No matter what, it's going to happen. Every society throughout history, their dollar has collapsed at one point. And there's a lot of signs to show it right now. We're in what used to be 3 is probably 4 or 5 times as much debt as in the Great Depression. It's just a bubble that hasn't been popped yet, and that's including inflation. So there's a massive, massive bubble that's getting ready to get popped, and the only thing that really props it up is our ability to have the dollar used on a global scale to trade oil, because oil is the most important resource, and we call that the petrodollar. So the rest of the world is not very happy with our dollar and not happy with our actions, and they're getting ready to switch to a new currency. It's called the BRICS, or they have a couple different ones, but BRICS is the main one, where all the other major players, China and Russia and all them guys, they're getting together and going to abandon our dollar. And when they do that, our dollar is going to collapse. And so when our dollar collapses, our government knows that this is imminent, so they have a plan, and what they want is absolute control in every way, shape, and form. And they've already kind of weaned us towards that, or pushed us towards that, with our debit cards and credit cards, and making it to where you can't use cash and stuff like that. And it's just a system that they're going to snap into effect, and when they do, they have all-out control. And look into China and the credit score system that they have in China. They use your own banking, like they control your money, they control your life, they control everything. And if you ever say anything bad or do anything bad, your credit score goes down and you get terrible things. And they control every aspect of your life, and that is the epitome of a loss of freedoms, and almost borderline slavery. You know what I mean? It's economic slavery. And so we want to make sure that that never happens to us. And setting ourselves up for a digital currency and giving them absolute control over our lives is a very scary thought that has very terrible outcomes. The potential for very terrible outcomes, and giving someone that much power is very bad. And they're wanting to push for it. You can see how the government's ready to push for that digital dollar. And at that point, it can be subject to hackers. If the grid goes down, what would we do? I mean, if that's our only way to survive, and something as small as a solar flare or EMP from a different country, which isn't small, but I mean, a solar flare happens all the time. What would we do if we didn't have electric and couldn't trade currency? Then that immediately throws us into a terrible scenario. So logically, it's just playing it out so many different ways. It's never a good scenario. And above all, it's not a tangible object, so it can be manipulated and it can be abused in any way, shape, or form. So it's something that it's hard to be trusted because it's such a intangible object. But if people want to do that, that's their free will to do that. And if they want to trust that system, that's fine. But like I said, it's logically not something to rely on and depend on, because it's not dependable. It can be hacked, it can be manipulated, it can be used to control us and not allow us to buy stuff or shut off our accounts or track us. Every dollar we spend, everything we do, they'll know and be able to track our entire lives, which some people may not mind, but I feel that's a huge invasion of privacy. And if we don't have another option, that's terrible. And like I said, if the grid goes down, that leaves us with no ability to even trade goods and services. So logically, it's not something to depend on. So what is the answer? How do we break away from a dollar and what they have and the system in place, and also have a tangible object? So my idea is to do it locally in communities. I've got a couple different ideas for currencies, but this is the first one that makes the best sense. Because there's always something tangible to back it, and we just need to figure out. There'll be obstacles to overcome, no doubt, but we can adapt and overcome anything. And once the problem arises, we'll sit and we'll work together and we'll figure it out. So what I think is in order to have a properly functioning currency, we have to have a tangible object to back it, like gold or silver or something. And if gold and silver can be monopolized, that's not a good idea. So we have to have a renewable resource. And if we're going to use a renewable resource, we need one that is very versatile and that the whole world could use for all different kinds of purposes. And I'm open to any ideas on what this resource could be. Corn is a very viable option. We use corn for a lot of things, fuel. There's just a bunch of different options that we do with corn, and obviously food, and just a lot of stuff we can do with it. So corn is a good idea, but I think having something a little more versatile and has more uses would be a good idea. And so I've thought real hard about it, and I feel that hemp is a great idea. Because to start off with, it's like a super sponge for CO2. So all the damage of the cars and stuff, the CO2 going up into the atmosphere, it's a real problem, and it's a real thing. I mean, obviously you can look around. I've been to LA in rush hour traffic, and it burned my eyes so bad. I'm kind of from the country, and it burned my eyes and my lungs so bad, and I just looked around, there were cars everywhere, I was stuck in traffic and couldn't go anywhere, and it almost gave me like a panic attack. So I know that we're putting stuff up into the air, so hemp is like a super sponge and helps clean the planet, kind of like where we're deforesting and stuff like that. Hemp grows fast too, so, and it's massive. It's a massive plant, and so it can help clean the earth and repair a lot of the damage that we're doing immediately within very short term. And it can start the process. I'm not going to say it's going to fix all the problems and everything's fine, but it's a great start. And it's, like I said, it's a super sponge, so it's just going to start cleaning up everything we've already done. And from there, we can use it for everything. We can use it for hempcrete. We can use it for Henry Ford was running cars in the 30s that ran on hemp and were made out of hemp. He was on the cover of Popular Mechanics holding a sledgehammer, and it said it was 5 times stronger than steel. And these cars ran on hemp oil, and we could be doing that now, but we don't, because it's well, a threat to the oil companies, which happen to also be the bankers that own the Federal Reserve. It's almost like a system. Anyways. So from there, we now have a object that we could use to power the whole world and could use for the whole world. We can create clothes. Hemp seeds are better for you than sunflower seeds. There's just a lot of different things we can do with hemp. It's so versatile. And from that point, we create a hemp currency. And anybody, anytime, can grow hemp and take it into this hemp depot. And it's a public place run with public cameras, and it has cameras on it at all times. And we can create a board and have people running, and different people running it at all times, and have multiple people in the room, so there's always oversight. And if you get caught cheating the system in any way or abusing it, that's like a super major crime. That's like one of the worst crimes that you can do. High penalties and stuff like that. And we create a completely open system to where people can bring in hemp, a raw plant, and they can grow it anywhere. We can grow it in parks, or the homeless could do it, or just anybody, anywhere. You could grow it in your lawn. You could grow it anywhere, and grow money and take it into this depot. And this depot breaks it down, and they'll pay you money for it. And at that point, you get a currency that you take out into the community, and you trade this currency around. And then the community, anybody in the community who needs stuff, they're like, oh, well, I need to fill up my car. Go to the hemp depot, and there's a gas station there, and you fill up your car, and you use your hemp dollars. And it's just a currency that sits there and goes in the community. Oh, I'm a clothes maker, and I need to make clothes. I'm going to go to the hemp depot and get my clothing from there, or I need hempcrete, or whatever. And we create a depot in which we can put these resources back out into public. And we obviously can't use it for anything, but it's the most versatile plant that I can think of. I don't know of a plant that's more versatile. I mean, we can use it for medicine. We can use it for literally anything that you can think of. I think that there's an option. I bet you could even make like plywood and stuff out of it and do plywood. I mean, there's no maybe 2x4 studs are about the only thing that we couldn't use hemp for. And I know that it would be able to clean the world while we did this. And it's a renewable resource that never goes away, that can never monopolize all the hemp seeds on the planet. Hemp grows wild all over. I mean, there's no way they can control this. And at the end of it all, it gives the local community absolute ability to have control of their money, and control of their resources, and control of their way of life. And at that point, you're set, and you're prepped up for anything that might happen, because we logically have to think our dollar is collapsing right now, and we have to be ready for it. It's going to happen one way or the other, because eventually every society falls at some point. Rome or any power throughout history eventually loses their power. And when they do, it's a cycle that always happens. And hyperinflation is one of those things that happens. And I don't see very many people talking about it. I've been talking about it for years, and now that inflation's happening, all the people I've been talking about it to are starting to be like, well, maybe Butterfield was a little bit crazy, but he might be onto something. Truth be told, about 10 years ago, I was having this talk with my friends and said, hey, hyperinflation's happening because I can see the way government's spending their money, and we're multiple times in debt as the Great Depression, and it's something that we have to worry about. And I tried to tell everybody, money you can't eat that. It doesn't do anything. So right now, you need to take your money and invest it into a tangible object, something tangible that can trade and at least be able to survive with, and be ready for what's coming. And I ended up burning a $100 bill in front of everyone, and if anything, that helped value the currency just a little bit more, because they print off money all day every day, which is the same aspect, which robs us. It doesn't make the currency worth more, it makes it worth less. Anyways, so it was the point I was proving to everybody, and I was a broke dude at the time. I didn't have money to do that. It was the point I was trying to make, and it stuck with all my friends. They still give me hell about it because I didn't have it, you know what I mean? But I did it anyway, and it was just, I'm stubborn, and I do stupid stuff like that sometimes. But the point is that we're on the verge of it happening now, because inflation is getting worse and worse, and we're starting to see, whoa, this is hard, and It's going faster than we can control. And eventually, when hyperinflation breaks out, we'll be able to go to the store with a wheelbarrow load full of $100 bills, and it won't even buy a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. And because the bread and milk will be so much, it'll be $100,000, $5 million for a gallon of milk, because the system will be manipulated and played with, and just everything is gonna happen, and it starts to happen rapidly. And you can look at other countries, Venezuela, Greece, all these countries recently where this has happened. It's not a new thing. It's happened in the last 20 years. You can look at these other countries and go, oh, they're flourishing, they're kicking butt, everything was awesome, oh shit. And then everything goes, wah! And hyperinflation happens, and civil unrest, and society breaks down. And we as a community have to prepare for this right now, because it's happening around us. We can't just keep going on beating our chest thinking we're just invincible. Like, logic dictates, look around and see that it's happening. The dollar's going down. Other countries are creating other currencies. We're almost on the verge of a war, because that's the only thing that props up our dollar and makes it happen, is our ability to have a petrodollar in which the dollar's traded with oil. And so once that stops, we're over. It's bad. We have to prepare for that. Other countries are doing it right now. They've been preparing for years, and our government just doesn't even say boo about it. They keep us distracted with all this stupid stuff on the media, and I think it's because they have a plan for absolute control after society breaks down, and they want us to battle each other for a set amount of time until they get the numbers down, and then they're going to come in with absolute control and say, oh, that's so bad that happened, guys. Here you go. I'm going to offer you these things if you just go and get the last guys that are still into freedom or whatever. And they're going to have absolute control, and that's what they want. They're going to bypass the Constitution. They're going to bypass everything and just say, you know what, we're the government, we're here to help, and we have absolute control now. And people will buy it because they created the system that collapsed. They controlled it, and then once it collapsed, we had no other choice because we didn't have any other way. We weren't prepped. They just led us on until everything fell out, and we weren't even ready. Society's going to break down. People are going to fight, and like I said, after a while, they're just going to come in. And after so many people, and we'll never see that it's them that created all this chaos deliberately, and us that were gullible enough to believe them and never prepped for any other idea. So we have to prepare for this stuff that's blatantly happening right in front of our face right now. Go to the store and tell me that inflation isn't happening, and I'm going to call you crazy, because you can't call me crazy anymore. I'm not the crazy one now. Go to the store and tell me that I'm wrong. So prepare for what's coming, and hyperinflation is a very real possibility. So what are we going to do at that point? We create our own currency in some way, shape, or form, some way to barter trades and goods and services. I have another thought for just like a barter system to where we can keep a log and go that way. But another idea I have is with the depot, you can do like a consignment store and take goods and services in and get a credit account that way, and have a currency to where we trade that way. And even at this depot, we can do our time and stuff and for our labor and exchange that way. This depot can be a good way to trade items and barter as well, and to where it can be like a consignment store, and we go and we take, like, say, even food. I think it's best with food, because then we can control the thing we need most in the world, and we have to prepare to be able to eat. Like I said, if society's collapsing and the dollar collapses and stuff like that, we have to be able to survive, and our most fundamental way is food, or our most fundamental resource is food. And so how do we disperse that and have it? And if we had a consignment store to where if we like create too much and have too many tomatoes this week, we go and we drop them off, and then somebody buys them, and when they buy them, we get a credit to the store, and we can go buy their products. And it's just a way for everybody to function, and we can do that with our goods, and even we could figure out how to do it with our services as well, and just have society function that way. Just figure out a way to do it in an emergency scenario, because it's going to have to go fast, and we have to just be ready. So before I hit my next idea for a currency, I guess I want to break down the two main thoughts of the way to run things financially and the flaws in both of them. They both have some positive ideas and they both have some negative ideas. And I think that in order to fix things, anything in your life, whether it's personal or anything in this world, in order to fix it, we first have to address the fact that there's a problem and figure it out from there. And we have to have the ability to look inside and go, well, there's a problem with this theory or with what we're doing, and then we try to fix it. And the solution I'm not sure of, but I'm going to just try and give my best thoughts, and I'm open to sitting down with other people to discuss this as well. I'm not saying I'm perfect and that these thoughts are flawless. I'm saying that they're going to need a lot of work, but they're doable, and it logically makes sense more than what we're doing now. If anybody else has something that plays out better, please let me know. But logically speaking, I guess I'll go with socialism first. Yeah, socialism or capitalism, I can go either way. I want to say socialism. So with socialism, you can look at history and say every time this has been tried, it's been failed in some way, shape, or form, and it's not working that well. Eventually, over time, it plays out and it fails. Now, there are instances where it may work for a while, but over time, it never holds up. And there's an inherent flaw in socialism that is ignored and not brought up, and that's the reason it fails. Is because the only way to have socialism is to give a government absolute power, and give that government not only the power to do and control the entire government and everything around us, you also give them financial control to where they can take from us and do what they want. And so logically speaking, this is setting ourselves up for failure, because at any point they can turn and flip on us, and somebody that we think is good then turns bad, and we now have a major problem because they have all the power and they have all the money and they have all the everything, and now we have this huge obstacle to try to overcome, and it usually leads in genocide. And there's a genocide in the process of overthrowing the corrupt leader and them abusing their power, which eventually it's inherent in mankind. Greed is inherent in mankind, and it doesn't matter who it is. Eventually they have the possibility to go corrupt, and we have to think about life from that mindset, is that any human on the planet can be overcome by greed and turn bad at any point. We just have to think from a rational standpoint that could eventually happen. I'm not going to say it's going to happen to every leader or whatever, but if you have 100 leaders and only one of them does it, it's that one that's going to lead to a massive genocide and have all these problems. So you can get away with it for a while, but eventually somebody's going to become overrun with that. And so you have to either figure out how to end greed in this world and make it completely go away, which I don't think it's ever going to be a possibility to do that, or realize that is a flawed system, and that's a major flaw that will turn around to bite you at any time. You cannot give the government absolute control of anything ever, because that leaves somebody the possibility to have all the power and be corrupted and do what they want. So freedom is always the answer, and giving the smallest government possible and letting people have the freedom to do what they want. And that's the other second problem with socialism, is that the only way to make socialism work is to take somebody else's hard-earned work and their money that they're working for and take it from them and then give it to these people that you want to run things. And at that point, something has been stolen from someone, and that is theft. If you take something from somebody that doesn't voluntarily give it to you, no matter which way you cut it, I don't care if one person does it to another person. If I go down the street and say, hey, I want to do something good, I want to rob you. Or if me and 10 of my buddies go down the street and say, hey, we're going to do something good, we're going to rob you. Or the entire country does something and takes something from one person. It doesn't matter. That's still theft. If you take a object from somebody and they don't want you to take it and you forcibly take it, that's theft. And so the only way to make socialism or communism run is by stealing from someone else. And that is not right. So those are the two fundamental flaws in which I see in socialism or communism, whatever. Socialism is a lot more open than communism, but they're pretty close. Socialism is just where the people think, they still have control, even though they give up all control, just like we have now, and don't have any power over the system. So they just elect people in, and they think since they elect the people in that they're going to have control. But if you look at our system right now, it takes $1 billion to get elected, so you can manipulate the system to where the people you want can get in, and then at that point we the people don't control it, and it's not run, and it's not socialist, it's run by money, and it's run by this other stuff, and it's not what you guys think or want. So in order to make socialism work, I think that logically it's a good idea. Now, after saying all the flaws, logically it's a good idea because it puts a fair playing field to where people have a more fair chance to get along in the world, and I like the thought of it. But the only way to make it right and make it possible to where it's a fair and just system is if we voluntarily give our money and do it as a voluntary system to where we decide, this socialist government, I will fund this voluntarily. And you can ask for 30 or 50% of my income, but it's up to me on what I want to give. And from there, I feel government should work from the budgets that they're given instead of being able to rob us endlessly. So I just have a little bit different thought. But right now, governments are allowed to just keep writing Blake's checks with our kids that are being cashed out from our kids. And it's not even right. It's not fair. It's not just. It's not anything. The system is corrupted and manipulated, and it's an oligarchy, and it's not right. So if you could put a voluntary way for us to fund the socialist society, that would be great. And then from there, being able to not give government all the power and keep it in we the people's hands. Socialism thinks that still because you're voting you have it control, but the voting system is even scary because it can be manipulated. So you have to try and keep it in the people's way, in the people's hands any way possible. And that's the major obstacle that I can't really try and figure out how to get past in a socialist society. So if anybody can figure out how to make socialism work without giving the government the power to take everybody's money and then redivide it, and having that middleman there, that middleman's the problem that can just be greedy and break down everything at any point. Like I said, you could have good guys for a while, but voting is not necessarily the most efficient answer. So from there, I'm now going to go to capitalism and point out the flaws of capitalism as well. And so capitalism is basically like monopoly, and it's a great way for people to exchange goods and services, and it's a great way for the hardest worker and the people with the best ideas or who are the most intelligent or whatever, that they can prosper and raise up. And it's a good system to where you get paid by what you produce, where socialism, it has the ability to not put in. You're not everything, you work and then the government redistributes everything. And so you don't have to work as hard for individual products that you want in this world. So capitalism is a genius way to receive the fruits of your labor, and if you work harder you get paid more, or if you have better ideas you get paid more. And the free market and capitalism is the best way to run society. It clearly works best. And notice how I said free market, because if the free market's allowed to flourish, there'll always be competitive ideas to keep each other in check. The problem being is that government has stepped in and regulated everything to where we don't have the ability for another resource. There's no more competitive market for these things because the government has taken it and monopolized it for the corporate owners that fund their campaigns and run their lobbyists, and it's a never-ending cycle of these corporations and corporate owners and big mega people that run the world, and they just manipulate us, and it's a big cycle that we're not really seeing. So we have to take that ability away for them to be able to manipulate the system. And capitalism is, like I said, basically monopoly, and we're to the point to where one guy and one group of people own it all. And eventually, if you play out capitalism, that's eventually going to happen no matter what, because the brightest ideas and the best ideas are going to thrive, and eventually somebody's going to get control of it all, and they have the ability to get too much control and cheat the system and make it to where it's not fair anymore. And that's what we're looking at right now, is that government's regulated everything to where big business strives and small business fails. And they have it designed that way on purpose. It's not some mistake they made or something that accidentally happened. I mean, it's at this point, we're in the game where we flip over the board and say, I don't want to play this stupid game anymore, and walk away. And everybody just doesn't know what to do. We're like, well, this sucks, and we're just hardly getting by, and we don't know what to do any other option. And that, my friends, is the problem with capitalism. And so both socialism and capitalism have their ups and their downs. They obviously both have a way to fail. I mean, we're looking at capitalism not doing us very well right now. I mean, I get it, we're flourishing, but at the same time, we're killing the planet. And these corporations, once again, that are manipulating the system and robbing us all, are allowed to kill the planet as they do it. And what we're leaving our children is a nation of debt, and a nation that's been ravaged by just over-consuming and just terribleness to the planet, nature, and everything. And we have to stop at some point and stop what we're doing and address it and try and fix it. And so we have to address the fact that capitalism has run rampant, and it needs reined in to an extent, or it needs set to where we the people can flourish again. And that's the great part about socialism, is that it makes it fair for everyone. But that's the great part about capitalism, is that if you work super hard, you get more. And that's the way it's supposed to be, you know? And we have to figure out a way we can walk the line on both of those things. And the system and the financial system's manipulated right now to not give us the power, to give the powers that be, or the people running it, the power. So we have to look at and address these flaws in order to fix them. And I know I'm probably stepping on people's feelers from both sides, because both sides feel very adamantly about what they've been taught in their lifetime, and they're taught that that's the only way to think, and that's the way they're going to think. And so they don't want to think outside the box, and a lot of people will not be open to this idea, and they're mad at me right now for questioning either capitalism or socialism. So it's just a lot of problems are caused by both these systems. So I'm trying to address the problems from both of them and take the bad parts out, and then put some other good parts in, and take the best parts from both of them and incorporate it. So the bad part of everything right now is that people are being allowed to manipulate the system. So that's the major problem that we have to overcome. But we also want to create a fair system. So in order to do all this is going to be a way different thought than what we've been told, but just keep up with me. We create a once in a lifetime fund that you get. And it's all, I would like to see it based on a local economy and a local currency, just like my hemp idea, to where we create a local depot to where everything's on camera and all this stuff. We print money at the same place. It's all on camera. Nobody's allowed to manipulate it. It's all run by we the people. There's a constant changing board that's elected. And from there, we start a once in a lifetime fund that after you've lived somewhere for a matter of years, we could say 10 or even 18. And if you live somewhere for so long, you get a one-time life fund. and right here locally, the median wage is about $50,000. So if you get a one-time life fund when you turn 18, you get $50,000. And that is a fair and open way to get the currency out, because if you start a new currency, you have to figure out how to get it into the public fair. You can't just be like, well, screw this dollar, screw this other stuff, we're going to just throw out a new currency. And what are you going to do? How are you going to throw it out? How are you going to make it fair? How are you going to make it not manipulated? So in order to make it not manipulated and fair, at the same time every year on January 1st, this money is released. And at that point, you release how much money is being printed and released and how much the interest rate goes up. Because the interest rate is where bankers and banks and everybody is allowed to manipulate and cheat the system and rob us all. So if we all knew the interest rate and could all fluctuate our prices and raise our prices equally at the same exact day, at the same exact time, that would be the fairest way possible. So on January 1st, when you distribute out this $50,000, anybody who's 18 years old or has lived in the community for 18 years, whatever, you get this money on January 1st, and it's printed locally, and it's a local, all created locally, and it's a local currency, and we'll call it red dollars. So you get 50,000 red dollars. And then you can go out into this community and distribute it as much as you want, however way you want. And it takes the best of both worlds. That is the best way, because generational poverty is so freaking hard to overcome. And I think that that's a lot of what's happening in a lot of communities. And they focus it on race, but generational poverty is one of the hardest things to overcome. It's just, it makes life extremely difficult, and it seems like there's no way out or no alternative. And it's possible, don't get me wrong by any means, but it's just very, very difficult to overcome because there's just so many obstacles at every corner. So what this does is it creates a free way for everybody to be equal at some point. You get 1 year's median wage to get a head start in this world and to go and just flourish. And you get your chance to take that money and you could invest it into a business and just kick ass in this world, and that lets capitalism flourish. And so you let capitalism flourish and run the economy, and that's how things are ran. But you start it with a socialist idea and get the currency out there and make it fair to everybody and make it to where it's a fair system, to where everybody has an equal chance. And if somebody inherits $10 million from their dad, that's cool, they still get $50,000. But it means a lot to somebody who's raised in generational poverty and doesn't have anything and doesn't have any looks to for a while, for years and years, but they know at 18 that gives you a fresh start to go start the world. And I think that it's a great idea to keep everything fair and also allow everything to fairly function. It's the best of both worlds. It gives everybody a fair shot, and it gives everybody a fair chance to work and succeed and do what you can with your money. And if somebody goes out and invests it wisely, they could do great things. And somebody could also go out and spend it all on crack and smoke all the crack in 1 day, in 2 days, and have $50,000 worth of a crack habit gone down the drain in a pipe in 2 days. But that's their free will to do that, and that's where capitalism flourishes, and that's how the system would be fair. And we're all going to be subject to our own decisions in life and how we do it. And I think that's the most fair way to do things. And so it's a little different idea. And no, it's not based on our lives, and it's not some life money to where it's some crazy thing. So no, you can't trade humans, and it's not some kind of thing to where we have anybody able to touch this life money or anything. No, we make it to where it can never be loaned against. It can never do anything. That's against the law. If somebody sells or whatever, thinks they have dibs on that money, whether it be a parent or a grandparent or anybody in any way, shape, or form, you cannot do that. That child or person is subject to do whatever they want with that money, and it never goes to any other government entity. It goes to no one. It can never be touched. That person gets that money in their hands, and then they go and they do what they want with it, and they pick it up in person. It's a tangible object, tangible dollars. And if anybody is ever caught printing these dollars and frauding the system, that's the biggest crime known to man. And we just punish them to the harshest abilities possible and make it to where we keep this system fair. And from there, we have an open way to trade goods and services and a fair way to do it all. So like I said, once a year, every year, there'll be new 18-year-olds or people that have lived in the community 18 years, and there'll be a new set of people every year. You know, you originally start, you'll get track of everybody that's 18 and everybody in the community that's been there for 18 years, and you get this number and you figure out how many people that is, and you print up this money, and then from there, inflation goes by how many new people are introduced every year. And once a whole bunch of new kids that were 17 the year before turn 18 over that year, or new people in the community live there that long, the new year on January 1st, you're going to print out all that money again and give it to all those people. But that's when the inflation rate's released, and that's when everybody raises their prices by said number of inflation. It's just almost like a tax. And from there, it can't be manipulated, it can't be abused, and it's a fair system for everybody, and in a way which we can exchange goods and services. And if you take this same idea and apply it to larger entities, so the problem, this is a real heavy problem. So the world is so connected now, we are always going to be able to trade goods and services. And whoever has the ability to trade goods and service the easiest, whatever currency or whatever form that the world decides to use to do this, is going to be the power of the world. And this is going to be a weapon, basically, that somebody has the ability to use, because economic warfare is a real thing. And if you shut down somebody's economy or society or whatever, those people die, and there's a major things going on with that. So we don't ever want to give anyone control of a dollar. And I know, like, in the Bible and stuff, they say there's going to be a world dollar, and when it does, we'll all have the mark of the beast and stuff like that. And having a digital or mark on us is the epitome of wrong, and I would never, I'm not religious like that, but I would never ever go to anything like that. That's absolute control, and that's just something I don't want any part of as well. And I definitely feel that. But at the same time, right now, the American US dollar is basically a world dollar, and it's the petrodollar, and it's what everybody's using to trade oil, like I was talking about earlier. So whoever has the control of that power is going to run the world. So we need to take that to where no country can control it, and to make it to where we the people run it, and to where no entity has power. So if we were to create some kind of bigger dollar, we could take this same scenario of a one-time life currency and apply it towards larger governments, you know, to where we get 50,000 local, and then maybe the state government does a currency with the Missouri state dollar, and then even the federal government, and then maybe even a larger, broader government, in which case we can all decide to trade goods equally. Because if we don't figure it out, somebody is always going to monopolize and do it anyway, and that person gets the power. So we need to stop them from being able to get that power and put it in we the people's hands. So we have to figure out some kind of alternative or some way to trade goods and services globally. It has to be a thing, because if not, we're going to be subject to whoever has the will to do it. And since the Bible says we shouldn't do it, it doesn't mean that somebody's not doing it, and it's going to be done anyway. And that's what's happening right now, is our dollar is basically the global currency now. So we just need to trade the ability for it to be manipulated. The people that own the dollar own the banks, they own the oil companies, and they own the weapons manufacturers. It's ironic that they all three, you look and see, and do the research and see that I'm telling you, what I'm telling you is correct. And they own the dollar, they own the oil, and which is what we depend on most, and they own all the weapons that enforce all these things. And you ever wonder why it costs $1 billion for a jet? Well, That's why. Is because those people are making money and they're allowed to charge whatever they want. There's no checks and balances to go, well, no, government, that's I don't think you should buy all those jets and all that stuff. And that's, somebody's making way too much money on that. So ultimately, we the people just have to figure out some way that we can control a currency in which we exchange goods and services globally that can't be monopolized or run by any person. Like I said, my ideas aren't perfect, but they make a lot more sense than what we're doing now. So I challenge anybody else out there to please throw out ideas with me and any other solutions that you have. I don't care how far from the norm it is. Let's just play it like a chess match and play it out. Think about it and see where it goes in the end and see how it plays out. So my number is 573-286-8316. Anybody out there has any ideas on how to make this better, let me know. So at that point, we would be able to have a way to trade goods and services on many levels. I think ultimately it's good to have competing currencies, and that's more of a free market scenario in which they compete, and it gives the best ones the opportunity to thrive. And so we would have a local currency, which I think is most essential. The local communities are what need to come first, and if we all had local currencies, we would be doing much better, and every community everywhere creates their own local currency. We wouldn't even need a federal or larger currency. We would just be able to function locally on our own and not worry about anything else. So that's the most essential form of currency that I think we need to create right now, is just get on it and prepare locally, because hard times are coming and all we can do is do what we can in our communities. And from there, just try and be ready and figure out alternatives. And if you look at currencies over time, they can be monopolized, just like the game of Monopoly. So let's just factor that part in as well. And we're going to overcome that problem right now too, and say that every 100 years, the currency is reset on any currency really, because it's going to be monopolized, and the game of Monopoly is going to be won, and somebody's going to hoard it. And gluttony is not only eating stuff massively, but also hoarding money and hoarding things like that. And that's just like within our nature is greed and stuff like that. So it's terrible. And eventually somebody is going to do that and have control of all the money. And it's just, history repeats itself. It's an obvious problem that we have to overcome. And let's just nip it in the bud right now and go ahead and say every 100 years we hit the reset button, we reset the currency, and we start a new currency and start over. And that we'll start over, do a new once-in-a-life $50,000 and get the new currency out there, because you gotta do it. And like I said before, it's only a once-in-a-lifetime $50,000. You only get one shot. And 100 years, that's a fair way to do it, and that allows a currency to go for quite a long time, and within a couple lifetimes, and it's just always a fair way to reset and set things right. And just realize that we have to do that on all scales and reset our currency every 100 years, and just redo a disbursement program out into society, because eventually with people and stuff, the inflation and all that stuff, the numbers are going to get hard to control, and it's a game of Monopoly. And if it doesn't work that well at 100 years, we'll do it at 50 years. You know what I mean? And everybody just resets their currency at 50 years, disperses a new life money, and goes on. But like I said, competing currencies and a local currency is the best way, especially for something tangible. So if we did local hemp currencies as tangible objects, and then had this other life currency or whatever on a bigger level, then that would be a way we could freely trade goods and still have the economic stability of a tangible object and the ability to survive in case something happens. And this other life money that I'm talking about, that can be digital or whatever, but like I said, it leaves the door open for manipulation and all these other things. But it makes it hard to not do without doing that. I get that. So logically speaking, from a standpoint, the way society's set up now, we have to do it. So to some extent, but I know we could still work with real money and send money back and forth. And like I said, this one-time life money from everybody can never be manipulated. And if it ever is, that's a crime. And no parents are subject to get their kids' money. Nobody is ever allowed to touch it. We make laws to ensure that everyone is guaranteed to get their money and have their own free will to do what they want with it. And you can't lean against it. Can't put notes against it before someone gets that money. You can't do it ahead of time. We'll make laws against it and make it to where they just are able to start fresh and do it from there. And yeah, I think that's the best way to be able to make society continue to go on. And we have to prep for what's coming, and we have to figure out logical solutions to the problems that we face. And this is the best way to put the power in the people's hands and to ensure freedom. And ultimately that's what I'm trying to do, is ensure the people run everything, and ensure freedom is the answer that we always strive for. A republic and a free currency is the way it should always be. Above all, we have to guarantee the free market is allowed to persist. We can never regulate business and stop business from thriving. The only way we can do that is if it's cheating and robbing from other people and harming someone. If there's a victim, there is a crime. Or if it's harming the planet. Because once again, the victim is the world, and it's what we're doing to it, and it's future generations, and it's pollution and stuff like that harms us all. So there is a victim there, and there is a crime. But unless a business is directly harming someone, cheating or stealing, the best ideas should be allowed to flourish, and then we should have a competitive market. Because if not, we regulate and give other people advantages that others don't, and it takes away our freedoms, and it takes away our ability to thrive. And it just limits ourselves and shackles ourselves as a species, because then we don't up our game, and we don't evolve like we're supposed to, and we don't continue to advance. We just get stuck in the mud and stagnate and stay where we're at. So the free market is essential to having society function. And if we don't do that, we take away freedoms and society starts to crumble. So the basis which society should be run is the free market and our free ability to create businesses and do what we want and run them how we please. And that's what I'm after in all this. I think that ultimately we just want the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone. And conflict comes from when government comes in and forces us all to live like each other and forces everyone to live by somebody else's laws. And we're all mad about it and don't want to do that anymore. And we just need to let freedom ring and let everybody have their freedoms back to do their own thing and live life the way they want to. So that's why I like the idea of a republic. I know this country was originally designed to be a republic where the individual rights remain supreme, not a democracy where the will of 51% of the people can decide to murder the other 49% because there's more of them. So a republic is ultimately the best idea for freedom, because it ensures that the individual remains free and that their rights are first. And so, like I said, freedom is always my favorite answer to everything, and I think that it's going to fix everything. I did write a book called The Handbook to Freedom. I break it down, all these ideas in there and many more. I just try to find solutions to the world's problems right now, and there's a lot going on. And I ask everybody to help throw out ideas with me and go from there. So I appreciate everybody keeping up. I release videos like this all the time. I talk philosophy. I try to create solutions. I have inventions. I do comedy stories. I just do all kinds of stuff. Butterfield Unleashed. Feel free to like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for keeping up.